Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Rockstar Manifestors podcast. I am so excited that you're here. Whether you are returning, welcome back, or brand new, welcome on in. I have a topic to talk to you about today, which is new beginnings and new years. And I'm recording this live on March 29th of 2023. So it may seem a little strange that I am talking to you about new years and new beginnings at the end of March. But I'm going to explain that for you. So for those of you who are new, or may not really know, a whole lot about me or Blue Moon Manifestations. My name is Patty, and I am a manifestation coach specializing in helping you believe in your dreams so much that they have no choice but to manifest and become reality for you. So I talk about that in many different ways. And of course, I love basing my framework on working with the moon. It's in the name of my business, and it has been probably the single most thing that has led to multiple changes and developments and made the biggest changes or drastic changes in my life. So as we go through some general beginnings that are not with, and I'm going to talk to you about one, maybe two, depending on time and such, personal new beginnings or new years, and how you can tailor that to yourself. And also how you can tailor or personalize each of the general new beginnings that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So let's jump on in. First of all, we all are familiar with the calendar year that starts with January and goes through December. That is referred to as the Gregorian calendar with the names of the months. And so that is the one that probably most everyone is familiar with. How you can start the beginning of the year in January, and you can either set resolutions, set intentions, work with the seasons, all the things within the structure or the framework of the calendar system, the Gregorian calendar. And that is perfectly okay. And you might even choose to simply incorporate that as one of the new years. So the next one is the zodiac calendar. And that actually lines up with the seasons of the year. At least for me, that feels more like a beginning of the year, because the beginning of the zodiac calendar is Aries, the zodiac sign of Aries, which we are currently in Aries season. And what Aries season means, for those of you who may not be familiar with that term, it is when the sun is in Aries, and that applies to all zodiac signs. So when the sun is in any particular zodiac sign, we are in that zodiac sign's season. And how you know we are in that season is because everyone of that sign is having their birthdays. So for example, Aries that we are currently in, all the Aries will be having a birthday from about March 21st to about April 21st, I think, or maybe it's 20th. But I am an Aries, so I know that Aries season we are in because my birthday is coming up in the middle of April. So the zodiac calendar starts with Aries, which happens in the springtime here in the Northern Hemisphere. It is when things are starting to bloom, temperatures are maybe starting to get warmer. If you are in an extremely cold climate, you may be experiencing some snow melt or just some thawing. But this is spring, when things are starting to come to life, to bloom, to move, to feel warm. And the sun, we are getting more and more sun because of the equinox, the spring equinox. We now start to experience little by little longer days until we hit the fall equinox. So that is the Gregorian calendar that you can work with, the zodiac calendar. I referenced a little bit that you can work also with the seasons, and the seasons are spring, summer, fall, and winter. And spring may feel like a beginning of the year for you instead of the middle of winter in January when the calendar year starts. Maybe spring feels like a beginning because of what I talked about, how things are blooming, you feel maybe like taking more action. Maybe if you set some intentions or goals at the beginning of the year, come spring, now maybe is when you're actually feeling like taking action or starting those habits or implementing an action plan to achieve your goals. That ties directly to working with the lunar year over the course, or the lunar cycle over the course of a calendar year. And I do have a podcast, several podcasts back, that talks exactly about that. How you can look at the entire 12-month year as one long lunar cycle. And the spring season, which is when Aries is that first quarter phase of the lunar cycle, which is when you start to take action. So you see how they line up. And the next kind of general scope that you might want to work with new beginnings is just the quarters of the year. And depending on your preference or depending on when you start things, the quarters of the year might line up perfectly with the seasons of the year, or it might be off by a little bit. But a quarter of the year is a 3-month period. So any 3-month period, you could set quarterly goals, quarterly intentions, start new things, new projects, if you like, at the beginning of those quarters, whether they tie into the seasons or not. So I talked a little bit about each, but the general new beginnings that everyone kind of has around the same time, or at least the same principle, is the calendar Gregorian year, the zodiac calendar or year, the 4 seasons of the year, and the 4 quarters of the year. And so with New Year's specifically, you can, I think the easiest way is for me to first talk about, as I'm thinking this through, talk about the personalized one. The personal one that is very specific to you is your birthday. This is my favorite one because it's mine, my personal new year. And so it happens to, because I am an Aries, it happens to tie in with spring and the first quarter phase of the yearly lunar cycle. But your birthday, if you think about it, is your beginning, right? That's when you enter the world. That's when your year on this earth, your first year started, because birthdays are actually the completion of a year, right? We celebrate our first birthday after the completion of our first year here on earth. And so that was a bit of a reframe when I was younger, that I was like, I don't quite understand that. But it was like, I'm 1 year old, and, or, we were talking about this in a group setting, I think is when I first learned about it. I don't quite recall that, but it's like you're starting the next year when you're celebrating your birthday and completing the previous one. So the easiest way to look at that is we celebrate our first birthday after the completion of our first 12 months here on Earth. So your birthday is the most personalized new year. And for New Year's, I'll break this down by New Year's and then new beginnings, just slightly different take on that. The New Year's that I personally work with and celebrate are my New Year, my birthday, or around this time of year, the calendar New Year, and the zodiac New Year. And there's additional one that happens on Halloween, which if you follow the wheel of the year is the like the witchy or the spiritual type of new year. And that is October 31st. Yes, Samhain. And so that is another new year that I work with. My personal new year, I set intentions and goals for me personally. I set things that I personally want to accomplish, things that I want to start, how I want my experience to be throughout this upcoming year. In January, which is the beginning of the calendar year, I actually use that as my business new year. And that's because the Capricorn new moon happens around that time. And Capricorn is referred to or known as the CEO of the zodiac. So it's the get things done, taking care of business, so to speak. So even though my business started in April, probably because I was working with my personal new year to start things, I look at January as the beginning of my business new year, and I set business intentions and business goals and things that I want to achieve or start or learn about, and get things done at that point in time. And then the one that I talked about in the fall, on October 31st, I actually use that as my spiritual or personal development, so to speak, new year. How do I want that to evolve? What do I want to look at? What do I want to expand? And I also revisit the year before at each of these to say what worked, what didn't work, and what, if any, changes do I want to make? How do I want to maybe up level what is working or expand on that? And what can be let go? What didn't work? What didn't feel good? What didn't I like? And now that I've identified that, moving forward, I've created that space and I can now bring in and try these new things. So there are 3 new years that I work with throughout the 12-month, any 12-month cycle. And so whether you choose to use those 3 or not, they don't have to be the same focus for you. So like your birthday, you can use that for anything. You can use the calendar year at the beginning of January for anything. It doesn't have to tie to that. But if you are in a career, let's say you don't have a business and you like this concept of working with the different energies, and Capricorn and January feel like a good time for you to set maybe career goals. What do you want to learn in your career or in your job? Where do you want to expand? Do you want to get a promotion? Do you want to move to a different field? Do you want to learn something that can help you become more of a value and resource to your company or your employer? You can work with this on any level. You don't have to have a business. I just happen to use that for me because I do. I do have that. So, and then the spiritual one or the fall one is more introspective. It doesn't have to be spiritual for you. Maybe it's simply looking at your comforts, like your creature comforts, because in that fall season, we're very focused on what feels good and being warm and cozy and the holidays. Maybe you want to look at your, what is the word I'm thinking of? Holidays or special days you want to celebrate, and you plan that out during the holiday season, during that busy holiday season, and you start making plans for the year ahead. So you can tweak and fine tune any of these general, general New Year's that I just talked about. Now, for new beginnings, this is almost, you can have new beginnings at any given moment, and you can base them or use them on, again, the seasons of the year, set new goals, set new intentions in 90-day increments to move you closer to a big picture goal. You can build on them 90 days or quarterly or seasonally. You can also work with, it goes down to pretty much microscopic. So you can start with a new month, you can start with a new week, you can work with a new day, you can work with a new hour, or even just moment by moment. Can be any moment, can be a new beginning to anything at all. And as I'm sharing this and as I'm talking about it, I know that I'm keeping it sort of vague, but that is on purpose. And the reason for that is because, at least in my experience, when I hear someone talking very specifically about do things this way, or do things in this order, or connect this to this specific thing, I tend to want to follow that example because I see that it has worked for them. And so I still want to share my experiences, but I definitely am not someone who's going to say it must be done in this way. It must be done in this order. You have to do it the same way I do, because that doesn't work. My experiences, my timeline, my lessons learned, and the order that I learned them probably most likely, I say even definitely do your exact. So I like to create the framework or share the framework, and then that gives you the space to grow and personalize it and tweak it and continue to do so on an ongoing basis. And even though it feels uncomfortable at first, know what the steps are. How And so it feels odd. And you might be like I was in the past. Okay, but tell me exactly how to do it and tell me exactly what each new year has to be for me. I'm going to invite you to just take a breath and allow yourself to be like, I don't know what that looks like. But if this concept of multiple new years, of personalizing new beginnings, of having the ability to jump into a new beginning at any given time, being able to work with the lunar cycle or any cycle, the seasonal cycle, the quarterly cycle at any given time, and make it work for you sounds a little bit exciting, maybe like, oh, yeah, like you're leaning in. I want to learn more. Then I invite you to start with one. And the one we're at right now, when I'm recording this, is spring and the Aries zodiac new year. You can jump in right now and say, okay, what does this feel like a new beginning for me? Is it goals? Is it my health? Is it learning about this process, learning how I can make this my own? And the beauty of this framework is that they all repeat. It is a cyclical pattern. So you're not missing out on an opportunity. It will come back around, and maybe next Aries season, after you tried some things, after you've maybe forgotten about it and gotten back, on track with working with it, you found some things that felt good, that don't feel good, that just don't resonate with you, but maybe you're thinking, but this way didn't work. What if I tried it this way? So maybe next Aries season, your new year is a completely new beginning for something totally not related to this. That's okay. That is the beauty of being human, of having free will, of being able to take something and make it your own. Because I have a founding belief, a firm foundational belief that the way things will work for you is when they mean something to you, when they're important to you, when they resonate with you, not when you're trying to copy someone else. And so I do a podcast every month called Lunar Lessons, and that is the lessons that I have learned or experienced through that lunar cycle. And I do that at the end of the lunar cycle, and I share with you my intentions. I share with you my realizations. So keep an eye out here on the podcast solely on Spotify or any podcast platform that is specific to the podcast platforms. It is not on the Facebook Live because I thought it was important to have each platform have something unique to it. And so that is something that is unique to the podcast platform, be it Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, anywhere you can actually listen to and subscribe to a podcast, you will have access to that on the Rockstar Manifestors podcast. And what I'm working on, just as a sneak peek for this lunar cycle, it is the confidence to be me in my own authentic way, letting go of preconceived ideas or obligations or expectations or just the way things have always been. And so, if you're interested in learning about this process and hearing mine along the way, then be sure to subscribe to the podcast on any platform that you listen to podcasts on and look for it at the end of the lunar cycle. And so that's where I'm going to leave it, even though it feels, even for me, it feels like, oh, wait, I haven't really wrapped this up into a specific ending. It's open ended. I invite you to find and get curious and investigate ways that this framework can work for you. So I will recap that the general New Year's that are, I would say, maybe more common or on a bigger scope are your birthday, your personal New Year, the calendar New Year beginning in January, the zodiac New Year beginning with Aries in April, and the woo. We'll go with that. That's kind of an overall category, like the woo, spiritual, witchy New Year in October for Halloween and Samhain. So those are the big ones. And then you can break it down any darn way you want for the smaller new beginnings. And the last bit, now that I've said all that, the last bit that I'm going to leave you with as a bullet note is maybe finding some personal days that are important to you throughout the year. Let's see. I always like to check in on April 1st, which is shortly before my real birthday or my actual birthday. That was my my nana's birthday on April 1st. And so I just kind of use that as kind of like, oh, okay, how am I doing? Checking in with giving myself that day to just kind of not have any specific goals, but I use it as a check-in day. I think is really the most accurate day because it doesn't have a specific theme or focus. I just think that's an important day. That is an important day for me because we had the same zodiac sign, but not the same birthday. And so look for important days throughout the year. And these can be anniversaries of an event, like a marriage or finishing school or anything that you might want to use as a check-in day, use as a review day, use as a day for yourself to just acknowledge that it's the X number of years anniversary since that event. And this will evolve and you can tweak this throughout the year and over time as well. But look for those important days. And if this is brand new to you and you're starting this right now at the beginning of the zodiac calendar, look through the calendar ahead and then make a mental note of days that you feel are important or that feel important at the time. And it might have nothing to do with anything on a calendar that anyone else knows about. It might have nothing to do with the time of year that everyone else is celebrating or talking about. And some ideas are maybe some celebrities' birthdays or some events globally that you want to honor, that you want to remember, that you want to learn from or learn about. This can go on forever and ever, like the ways that you can personalize this. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. And if you do have questions and you're like, I really just am not grasping this, or you have something that you maybe want me to dive a little deeper on in the future, I invite you to email me those topics. The email is vision, VISION, at bluemoonmanifestations.com. And you can also comment if you happen to be watching this on YouTube or on Facebook in the comments and let me know what topics or questions or feedback that you have and your thoughts about it. And if you are, this is the last kind of breakdown, not for the topic, but if you're watching this on Facebook and you want to catch prior podcast episodes, there is a playlist. It is called the podcast, the Blue Moon Manifest, or the Rockstar Manifestors podcast playlist, right in the videos section. And that is only podcast episodes, which excludes all other lives and videos that I do on the Facebook platform. So every single place that you can hear this has a designated spot for you to find prior episodes, and emailing me is the easiest way to communicate topics and feedback that you have about episodes or topics that you want to learn and hear about. And that's what I have. I know it's kind of like, I don't feel quite completed, but we can both sit with that discomfort a little bit and say, it's okay. I don't have to have it wrapped up in a perfect little bow, because now I get to make it my own and see what that feels like. I invite you to get curious about that. So thank you guys for being here and for catching this episode. And I will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.